CEO Show, your gateway to building a standout business with your personal brand. And today we're asking the question, how could you run your business in half the time? So instead of chasing after that large audience that's so hard to catch or trying to scale your business to seven figures or beyond, what if you could have this truly satisfying business that gives you the life you want and gives you the impact that you want to make and actually do it all in just 25 hours a week? What would your life look like if that was it? So this vision is exactly the vision of today's guest, business coach and author, Karin Rozell. She brings this to her work in a method that she calls Happy Little Practice, which is designed for your company of one. So if you're a solopreneur, I want you to stay tuned. Don't touch the dial. We're going to take a deep dive in how you can develop your own happy little business. Karin Rozell, welcome to the show.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. So I would like you to just start us off by giving a little bit of the context of the vision behind Happy Little Practice. Like, I know that all of us people in business and all of us who started something on our own are, we did it because we didn't want to be on the normal track, on the track of being in the regular business world, in the corporate world, or working for someone else. And so now we're working for ourselves. But the problem is that even though we supposedly have the freedom to do our own thing, there's still an enormous amount of pressure to be doing all the things and to, not be satisfied with, oh, we have this, relatively modest enterprise, but we need to make it bigger and we need to make it better and we need to become an influencer and we need to get on Instagram and show everybody what we're doing and on and on and on. And it ends up being this very vicious gerbil wheel that we all start running on. And it can be a ragged run for sure. So talk about that and why you're not doing any of that.
Well, I did try that. First, I went down that path. But you're right. I started my business just like most people. I wanted to have a different quality of life. And I wanted to work on my own terms. And I wanted to do meaningful work like most of us. And then I proceeded to follow the vision that I saw laid out before me by other entrepreneurs, very successful people who are wonderful mentors. And they were showing me the model that we all see on TV and in magazines and on social media, which is kind of go big or go home. And I just pursued that because I had the mindset that you just put everything you have in your business to make it work. But at some point there became this kind of diminishing returns of like, well, when will it be enough for me? And it wasn't until I started having kids where you have to actually manage and take care of other humans and not just yourself. I could work late into the night. It was starting to be troublesome with my marriage because, at 6 o'clock, my husband, when are you coming out? But it wasn't until I was pregnant where I was like, I physically can't keep working like this. And then I started asking myself, well, why am I working like this? Like, who says? It's like all of a sudden, all the teachers and wonderful people in your life have given you one vision of success. And it wasn't until I started questioning it and saying, well, what's my version? And do I really want to become a CEO? I was trying to become a CEO and I really admire all the people that can. And maybe I just didn't have the desire for it. And so when I started asking myself different questions and questioning all the handed down visions of success, like in Success Magazine or Entrepreneur Magazine, that I came up with my own idea. And I think that's the big jumping off point where you have to pause and say, okay, this is what everybody says. If you don't pause and do this, like you're just going to follow blindly what everybody else is doing because that's just kind of the way our culture is. Big and fast and, gorgeous and all that. So when I started questioning that, I was able to find different answers. I was like, okay, what would I do with another 100,000? And I started asking myself, well, I don't really need a mansion and I like where I live already. So why am I doing this? and I could think of some things, some stuff, but ultimately things that weren't really going to radically change my life. So then I decided there had to be another way, and just started kind of zigging where everybody was zagging. And at first it certainly felt like, is this okay? Can I do this? Am I doing it wrong? So once I got over that, it took a little while because it just felt better for me. You know, I wanted to figure out how can I work during school hours now that I have children, still make really great money, but also not be like spent when they get home at 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I definitely, for myself, especially when my son and I have 2 children, my son and a daughter. My son was born, he was the first one. It completely changed how I looked at everything. You know, I had been the kind of worker who was all about the work. Like my whole identity was wrapped up in what I did.
Me too.
And if I ended up having to work until the late in whatever, or work on weekends, then so be it. And it's the moment my son arrived, it was like, oh, I get to be a dad.
Right.
And that just, like all the stuff about work, it was like, this is really, all the stuff that I thought was so important is no longer actually that big a deal at all. Like, this is the big deal. This is the amazing deal. And so it's a really refreshing shift that I think people who haven't had the experience of being parents yet don't know, and they should study up because it's awesome. But the other part that I want to get to is just that now you do need to create a balancing thing. Like, how can you be a parent, and one that's like, you know, whatever your version of being a good parent, being a devoted parent is, and still have your work and have this part of you that is your expression in the world and the gifts that you're bringing to the people who you're serving.
Yeah.
And so you've been doing this for quite some time now, so I consider you a bit of an expert on parenting and working in a what I would consider a fairly thriving, although still modest, practice. So what are some of the foundational pieces that you've put in place that allow you to do that?
One thing about the parenting is that I want to model how to have a life for my children, not just, you know, be a great parent. I want them to see us having a career that we have molded and have created, and there's twists and turns. I want them to see that, and they see it and they appreciate it, and that then has, you know, so that on the other end of the parenting, I want them to see the whole thing, not just like, I'm only a good parent, I'm only about parenting for you. I want them to see, I want them to know how to build a life.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a new definition, or a really interesting definition of what it takes to be a good parent, is modeling the stuff you're doing that's not parenting, and have them being able to see that and go, oh, this is, you know, like, this is my mother, or this is my father, and they're doing something really cool. Like, I just last week, I got a card from my daughter. My daughter is 18. She's going to be 19 next week. And she had drawn, you know, like, this is a card that she made, and there's a picture of a sailboat that she had drawn on there. And then on the inside, among the comments, she said, "Thanks for being such a cool dad."
You're like winning.
And I just went, oh my God.
So awesome.
I was like, I must have, like, somewhere in there, I must have done at least 1 or 2 things that was okay.
Yeah, for sure I'm messing them up left and right some way, somehow. But that's like part of the vision of my business, is that I want them to see, like, there are lots of different ways to work. Like, when my son's now into YouTube, you know, which I'm like, hey, YouTube can make you really smart or really dumb, depending on what you watch. Yeah. And I'm like, when you're ready, I'll pay for a training and you can practice on my stuff. And he's like, what? Huh? I'm like, no, I want you to think like that. How are they monetizing? How are they making money? Like, I like to break things down so that they can see behind the glamour of things. Yeah. And, you know, and then when you look at the business, then I had to realize, okay, I'm not going to be able to outwork people or outspend people in my marketing or have the best testimonials in the world with the most, like who made the most this, or have the most. So what can I do? Well, I decided, and since I can't compete really with the big corporations that have coaching and business coaching programs, what could I do? I could specialize. So I decided, well, okay, well, there's other people like me who want a happy little practice, and their versions of that, but don't want a little bank account, right? There's plenty of people with a little practice who are like struggling. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So we had to specialize. So that's one of the steps, is really figuring out like all the people you can serve, who can you? Because if I only have 25 hours a week, I can't be reinventing the wheel all the time with my work with my clients or my marketing. I can't be creating content all the time. I want like everything over time, and you do it layer by layer, gets a little bit systematized. And by that, I mean like, okay, there's a core piece of content that I want all my marketing to lead to, which is watch my signature talk. I want people to come into 1 or 2 offers that I have. I can't create all this stuff. And while there's some constraints there and limitations, there's actually so much freedom in that, because I want to be able to sit down when I have 5 hours to work and just get to work and do it, and not be like, what am I doing? Am I doing this or am I doing that? What kind of client do I have today? They're all wanting to create their happy little practice in some way. And they do it very uniquely. So the specialization, the kind of deciding that not to zig where other people zag, and really kind of, well, I can focus people, but I can't outwork them. So let's do that.
Yeah, you're right. Can't, like, outworking people is not a competitive strategy.
I'm not really competitive in that way either. I'm like, let's just run my own race.
If your competitive advantage was, I can work harder than anybody else, well, somebody down the street is going to hire 10 people and then you're toast.
I know.
Like, good luck with that.
Plus, after 40, I'm like, I can't win that game either.
Well, yeah, there's that too. Who wants to work until 2 a.m. or do an all-nighter or any of that stuff? Just forget it. Yeah. So in the book that you wrote, the thing that struck me about the book when I saw the cover was the subtitle, which was "Super Simple Ways to Stand Out." And this is the Standout CEO show. So I thought, you've already touched on a couple things in terms of what you're doing that's so different. Like, you have your own method, which is unlike, it really is pretty distinctive. So talking to people who are listening to this, what are some super simple ways that they should be thinking about in terms of standing apart from the people who are like them?
Well, like I mentioned before, you first understanding that the simplicity and the word simple is key, because anything really complex is best for very robust, advanced, business, and maybe with a team to pull it off. So I knew that while I have advanced marketing skills, I didn't want complex because, well, some days I don't sleep because of some kid or whatever. It needs to be simple. And so I tell myself and my client, I say, self, let's make this simple using my own natural, like what are my skill sets and what I feel comfortable doing. And simple becomes doable. It has to be doable, sustainable. If I do something special, it's a short sprint. So everything has to fit into that simplicity model. Like, can I do this long term, forever and ever? Not that I will, but I want to be thinking like that. So if you're doing something that's complicated, like, that's great, but will you be able to continue doing it? So one of the keys to stand out, honestly, is a little bit of consistency.
Yeah.
And rather than intensity. And we see nothing but intensity in our inbox and on social media. And it's like launches and this. I got out of the launch business. I don't launch anything because something in my life would happen with other little humans that it would throw me off my game.
Yeah, I have a friend here in Arlington where I live, and she and I meet every week as accountability buddies. We've been doing this now for a couple of years. It's a really good thing to do. And she is in that launching world. And I'm just sort of watching her in a little bit of amazement where she is heavily influenced by some other coaches that are mentors for her who have big coaching practice and big online programs. And just this last holiday season, she went through this huge launch where she had all these people helping her promote the launch. She had, I think it was a week-long, 5-day challenge kind of experience. And guess what? her children, who were all in school, came home sick as dogs, and she caught the same thing they had. And so for that whole time of the launch, she was down for the count, like unable to do it. And it was tragic. And when I saw like this whole thing unfold, I just went, oh my gosh, like this is absolutely not the position that I ever want to find myself in. Like, it's just not worth the
I want my
struggle.
marketing to be resilient in the face of snow days, my kids are home,
Right.
or somebody gets sick, or I have low energy, low like confidence, but I need to still show up. I need to be the simple enough, you know? And I'm glad that you brought it up, because I do find some people build this whole, like they think they can't do one-on-one work because they've been told it's overwhelming, and it's usually been told by people who have a scaled business. And I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be overwhelming if you start to make little systems. And right, it doesn't have to be complex or require technology. If you go for a bit of consistency instead of intensity, like, and you specialize, and you don't have 6 offers, you have 1 offer, maybe a couple tiers of it, like that, you get really good at that. And in terms of standing out, one of the most powerful things is like, stop trying to prepare to get ready and building all this infrastructure for things. Like, just talk to people, whether you're giving classes or like an interview like this, or just
Right.
actually talking to people in your community. That will beat all social media posts, all the things.
Yeah, totally. I resonate with that so much. I mean, this thing of when you're talking with folks and you have a one-on-one practice, to me, first of all, if you're careful with what you offer and what you do, those people are going to be the best people ever in terms of you get to choose who you're going to work with. And if your practice is positioned in a way where you are high ticket and you are charging a premium amount for your service, which you should be, then just that alone is going to be a filtering process where you can be quite choosy. Like, you can only serve so many people. It's not a large number in a year. And so you get to decide, you get to say, well, this is, you're an amazing person. We seem to really resonate. Let's work together. And it becomes much more of a collaborative thing, which is satisfying for you and them.
And it's an energizing cycle. Like, I get to talk to like they're more interesting than any of my friends.
Right.
I'm like, these people are so interesting.
Right.
And I like that you said that, because the entire Happy Little Practice methodology is built on the boutique business model, which is a smaller number of clients, and we serve them supremely well at a premium price point. And so we're not going for a mass volume of sales. Especially, like, we see that in our counterparts that have a scaled business. They can charge a bit less because they're making their money off of volume. And most of us, whether you're starting a business or even just have a small business or a private practice, don't have a huge volume. And yet we're trying to mimic the pricing and the modeling and the marketing of a kind of a beast.
Yeah.
And to me, those numbers they may be humbling. Like, oh, okay, well, if I have 34 clients next year, I'm going to double my income. Like, that's totally doable to me, or 13 clients for somebody else, depending on your pricing and the quality and your delivery.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's another aspect to the work that you're doing, which I really like, which is that the whole premise behind your offer is that it's busting this myth, this very big conventional wisdom that exists out in this space that we're all familiar with. And most of us have chosen to believe that in order to be successful, we have to be big. In order to, have a successful enterprise, we have to, go after this large community, and we have to, do all, like, we have to be on social media. We have to, like, get on Oprah. We have to become a celebrity ourselves. There's all these aspirational things that we have been told, and for most of general society are choosing to believe about. If you want to be a successful business person, you've got to be another Steve Jobs or another Marie Forleo or whoever you want to pick as the model. And, or even somebody like Brene Brown. It's like, these are super successful people, and we all know who they are because they've become celebrities, but we don't necessarily have to follow in their footsteps of trying to reach the same level of notoriety and audience eyeballs on our stuff that they have. And the connecting part that I see, though, with what you're doing is that, okay, so you're breaking that, saying, look, this is not true. You don't need to do this in order to be successful. There's another way to be successful, and the other way just happens to be your way. Like, it's the happy little practice method, And so
Yes.
if somebody wants, like, somebody gets their mind shifted in that, in talking with you or hearing about what you're doing, or they're listening to this podcast and they go, oh, this sounds great. Now they know that if they want a happy little practice, the person to go and talk to about getting that is you. And you've become, like, super attractive.
Well, I never wanted to be, early on in my business, I realized convincing people to be my clients, selling hard, was I created clients that I needed to convince over and over and over again throughout our coaching. And so I'm like, are you just interested in this way? If you are, come on over here. If you're not and you want to scale, you want to do other things, there's plenty of people to teach you that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, this is the thing, is like, I think, I guess it's Seth Godin who puts this as well as anybody, in terms of, people like us do things like this. And
He's
so
my
when you're
favorite
talking,
marketer.
when you're talking about when you're spreading your message, you want to be clear about who's it for.
Yes.
And where do you stand? Like, what's the change that you're wanting to make in the world? And when you're really super clear on that, then people know whether they belong or not. And if they don't fit, great. They know that they don't fit, and you don't have to worry about them. And the people who do, they're the ones who literally, they're going to come knocking on your door instead of you having to chase them, which is totally way to be happy in your practice.
Well, the happy part came from the place of, listen, the world's going to tell you how to be happy if you don't decide for yourself. And everyone's version of happy may be slightly different. We get to right size our business for that. It makes me happy to live in the country. Somebody else would be miserable here. It makes me happy to work with this style of business, and somebody else would hate it. It's like, do like your version of that. Otherwise, like, why bother? Because we can be like, okay, sort of happy working for somebody else.
Yeah, I just got a comment here from Leslie Flowers. She says, my personal experience, she says, my earlier clients were probably not the right ones, and she ended up working harder than they did, and she was exhausted, and she can see that she wants to look at this a new way in 2023. Good for you, Leslie.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
there is a thing about when you start accepting people who are coming in simply because they say, I want to give you money, like, I want to hire you, and they're not the right fit, and you end up saying yes to them anyway, that usually ends up being a challenge for both you and them.
Yeah, I encourage my clients to kind of, instead of we do an application style business. Like, imagine having a nice specialty boutique that people make appointments to come purchase your wonderful dresses or products, but we do it with services. And not because it's an ego thing, but because, like, you got to know who you work best with. And some people might say the right things, but they really aren't the right fit. And that's half the battle of getting really wonderful results, is having that right fit client.
Yeah, totally. We're all going to be happy with those clients who fit.
They are. They're energizing. They're fun to work with, and you look forward to it. You're not depressed or depleted from your clients. And I don't think, like what Leslie wrote, if your clients are kind of you're feeling resentful. I think it's a natural life cycle of a business. It just means like it's time to look back, say, who are your favorites? Who really happily and like paid you, got great results? Now we can go forward. And where there's some, there's more, just like them.
Yeah, right. And often the ones that you have, if it's working really well, they're the ones who are going to tell their friends who are like them. And if you're doing the right thing, people will come to you quite naturally.
The converse is also true. Your not fit clients also refer, because you bend over backwards. You go above and beyond to try to get their results for them. And then they refer clients just like them.
Right.
And it's really not worth it.
Yeah, no great reward there at all. All right, so we are coming to the end of our time together. This has been a really cool conversation. If there was one thing that we haven't touched on, all about basically taking a minimalist approach to your business, avoiding the big, huge scale approach to growing for the worth of growth, just for the purpose, just sort of like I'm growing for the sake of growth only. What's that one thing you'd like to share now?
Oh boy. Listen, my husband and I have this conversation about anything that we choose to do for ourselves and our family and our business. I'm like, how is it going to impact how we live? You talked about those uber successful celebrity figures, and I see them as Olympic athlete level commitment. And the way that, just like Olympic athletes, they train at a whole different level. And they should make 7 figures for that level. And it doesn't mean that we're less committed, but it means like, how do you want to live day in and day out? And can you reverse engineer how your business is structured to create that? So that way you can be happy, not because we expect our businesses to make us happy at all times. That's not really how it is, but because that makes it so worth it.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, that's a really good note to wrap up on. Karin, thanks so much for coming on. If there is a way that people would like to reach out to you, what's the shortest route from me to Karin?
Well, you can go to KarinRozell.com. That's Karin with an I and Rozell.
All right.
You can find me on social too, but that's where I mostly hang out.
Okay, so I will make sure that the link to your website are in the show notes so people can easily find you. And Karin, thanks so much for coming on today. This has been great.
Thank you so much.
And for you who are listening at the end, I just want to remind you that if you'd like to go binge the whole archive, all the audio of the Standout CEO Show, you can go to standoutceoshow.com and it's all there. You can binge to your heart's content. And the best way to join us is to join us live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And until the next time, so long, goodbye.